best. Your specialty, I believe.
After faking his death during his last mission, former hitman Arthur now lives a peaceful and quiet life in Rio de Janeiro under a carefully crafted false identity. One sunny afternoon, while relaxing at an upscale beachfront restaurant, he is approached by a mysterious and confident woman named Renee, who shockingly presents proof of his real identity. Renee works for a powerful and shadowy figure who wants to hire Arthur to eliminate 3 high-value enemies, but each death must appear to be accidental to avoid suspicion. She warns that if Arthur refuses, his true identity will be exposed to the criminal underworld, putting him in grave danger. Feigning cooperation, Arthur pretends to make a phone call, but instead stealthily takes a picture of Renee with his phone for later investigation. Realizing she's been photographed, Renee quickly draws a gun on him. Arthur reacts swiftly, flipping the table to block her aim and loudly rejecting the offer. Her bodyguards immediately move in to subdue him, but Arthur skillfully fights them off, using his expert combat training and whatever makeshift weapons he can find in the restaurant, including a hot grill lid and steel serving trays. To escape, Arthur leaps onto the roof of a passing gondola moving over the water, but Renee and her men also climb aboard, firing shots as they close in. When Renee begins climbing after him, Arthur times his move perfectly, jumping from the gondola onto a nearby hang glider. With the wind at his back, he soars away and escapes into the night skies above the ocean. That evening, he returns to his boat only to find several armed men snooping around. Realizing they're after him, Arthur uses a remote detonator to trigger the emergency explosives he had installed earlier. The boat erupts in flames, killing the men and erasing all traces of his presence. Afterward, Arthur travels to an old shipping container he owns, where he keeps backup gear and documents. He burns his old passport and forges a new identity, changing everything from his name to his digital footprints. Sometime later, Arthur relocates to a quiet coastal village in Thailand, where he takes refuge in a modest hut owned by his old friend May. Under the floorboards of the hut, Arthur hides a secret stash of weapons, cash, and supplies, and he wastes no time investigating Renee's background. He discovers she works for Crane, a brutal and manipulative criminal from Arthur's past with whom he shares a dark history. The next day, a woman named Gina unexpectedly arrives at May's hut, claiming she needs medical supplies. May notices bruises and signs of abuse on Gina's body, but Gina insists she doesn't want help. That night, May hears disturbing sounds from the docks and witnesses Gina being assaulted by a man named Frank aboard a nearby boat. Deeply concerned, May begs Arthur to intervene. At first, Arthur is hesitant. He's trying to stay off the radar, but his loyalty to May compels him to act. Arthur boards the boat and attempts to reason with Frank, requesting he let Gina go. Frank reacts violently, attacking Arthur. A brutal struggle ensues, and Frank is killed when he falls and strikes his head. Gina faints at the sight, and May soon arrives to help her off the boat. While searching the vessel, Arthur finds a loaded handgun, Gina's passport, and a mobile phone with a photo of himself, proof that this wasn't a random encounter. He burns the boat afterward to eliminate all evidence. When Gina regains consciousness, Arthur holds her at gunpoint and demands the truth, asking if she's working for Crane. Gina tries to escape, but Arthur easily overpowers her and forces her to confess. She reveals that Crane is blackmailing her. She doesn't work for him willingly. He threatened the children she cared for at a Cambodian shelter where she used to volunteer. Gina's job was to pose as a vulnerable victim to gain Arthur's trust and then contact Crane once she got close to him. However, Frank had taken the act too far, and she had begun to regret her involvement. Arthur forbids her from sending any signal to Crane, determined to take control of the situation. The next day, Arthur researches Gina's background and verifies her story. He learns that she once worked for a humanitarian organization in Southeast Asia, and the children she helped are truly in danger. Crane had tracked her down and coerced her into cooperating. Not long after, Arthur notices a suspicious boat watching the shoreline. Realizing they're being monitored, Arthur walks hand in hand with Gina on the beach to make it seem as though their mission is proceeding as planned. May sees the two together and, misunderstanding, arranges for them to be matched during a local Thai matchmaking ceremony at a party she hosts. Despite the tension, Arthur and Gina enjoy the night and begin to grow closer. That night, Gina apologizes to Arthur for dragging him into her dangerous world. Arthur sympathizes. He opens up about his own childhood, having been an orphan sold into slavery and trained as a child soldier. Crane was once his comrade, but while Arthur managed to escape, Crane remained trapped in the system and was eventually betrayed. Arthur suspects that Crane now blames him for that betrayal. Their shared past adds emotional weight to the looming confrontation. Arthur and Gina share a kiss and spend the night together, strengthening their fragile bond. The next morning, Arthur tells Gina he's arranging her safe extraction, one that won't endanger the children. He refuses to do Crane's bidding and vows to end things by killing Crane himself. As a symbol of trust, he gives Gina his father's old watch, the only thing he has left of him. But their plans are interrupted when police officers suddenly arrive on the beach. Gina quickly recognizes one of them as one of Crane's men. Arthur engages in a fierce fight and manages to escape, but Gina is kidnapped in the process. Arthur is then forced to meet with Crane, who confirms Gina is alive but gives him a cruel ultimatum. Kill 3 targets and make each look like an accident. The first target is Krill, a notorious African arms dealer currently imprisoned in a high-security facility in Malaysia. Crane hands Arthur a small capsule containing a GPS tracker, instructing him to swallow it after completing the job so they can retrieve him. While Gina is held captive on one of Crane's private ships, Arthur begins to strategize. Krill's prison is located on top of a steep cliff surrounded by shark-infested waters, making escape almost impossible. Arthur visits a local black market and buys supplies: explosive chewing gum, shark repellent hidden in a tin of skin cream, and a hollow cigarette to hide the GPS capsule. He crafts a new identity as a wanted fugitive and ensures he'll be captured and sent to the same prison. After his arrest, Arthur is processed into the prison. The guards search his belongings but find nothing unusual. Over the next few days, he blends in with the prisoners and gathers information. Krill is heavily guarded because many inmates want him dead. Even from behind bars, Krill continues to control his empire and is feared like a king. Arthur observes a knife being passed secretly among prisoners and later bumps into one of them to steal it discreetly. Soon, an assassin tries to kill Krill in the dining hall, but Arthur intervenes and eliminates the attacker. This earns Krill's interest, and he invites Arthur to dine with him, under the condition that he comes without protection. To Arthur's surprise, Krill agrees. During their tense meal, Krill offers Arthur a position in his criminal network. As soon as Krill turns his back, Arthur seizes the moment. He strangles Krill to death, then slips snake venom from Krill's own ceremonial stash into his drink to make it look like suicide. Arthur poses Krill's body in a meditative position so the guards won't suspect anything right away. Afterward, Arthur uses the explosive gum to create a hole in the prison wall, revealing an escape tunnel. He swallows the GPS tracker, applies the shark repellent to his skin, and leaps into the ocean just before guards arrive. Crane's men pick him up via speedboat. On board, Crane video calls Arthur to confirm the first kill and assures him that Gina is still alive. He then reveals the second target: Adrian Cook, a billionaire human trafficker living in a heavily fortified mansion in Australia. Several days later, Arthur begins investigating his next target. He discovers that Cook's penthouse suite is nearly impenetrable, heavily secured on all sides, but it features a cantilevered glass-bottom pool that extends dramatically out over the street below. Arthur hires a helicopter to observe the building from a distance, gathering aerial intel. Later, he pretends to be a prospective buyer interested in one of the neighboring apartments. While the real estate agent shows him around, Arthur cleverly distracts her by calling her phone. During that moment of confusion, he secretly photographs the apartment keys to create duplicates. Next, Arthur uses a combination of hazardous chemicals to create a small yet powerful explosive designed to shatter glass in a way that mimics a pressure-related accident. A few days later, he returns, now disguised as a building technician, gaining access to the tower unnoticed. Using the duplicated key, he enters the adjacent apartment. With specialized climbing gear, he exits through the window and carefully scales the building's outer wall until he reaches the pool. There, he drills a small hole and discreetly inserts the custom explosive. At that exact moment, Cook is swimming in the pool and spots Arthur. But before he can sound the alarm or call for help, the glass begins to crack ominously beneath him. Arthur quickly retreats, sliding back into the apartment just as the pool structure gives way and shatters. Cook plummets to his death, falling from the penthouse to the street below. Crane, watching the news report, realizes Cook is dead and instructs his men to prepare for the next encrypted video call. Meanwhile, Gina, held hostage, notices a recurring detail. She's always seated near a window showing the ship's hull number. Subtly, she adjusts the webcam's framing to emphasize this. When the call begins, Gina raises her wrist to show Arthur the watch he gave her, drawing his attention to the visible hull number behind her. One of Crane's henchmen notices her subtle move and quickly ends the call, but Arthur has already noted the number and begins tracing the ship's current location. Soon after, Arthur hires another helicopter to follow the ship from the air, then jumps into the sea with a bag full of custom tactical gear. After hiding the bag beneath the ship's hull, Arthur stealthily boards the vessel. He begins silently eliminating guards, one by one. Unfortunately, he's eventually spotted, triggering a brutal hand-to-hand battle. While Arthur fights, Gina is taken from her room. She struggles and attempts to defend herself, but her limited combat skills aren't enough. She's overpowered and confined inside a helicopter. Arthur grabs a guard's grenade and uses it, along with the man's body as a shield, to incapacitate several attackers. However, reinforcements arrive, and he is eventually tossed into unconsciousness. Moments later, both Arthur and Gina are transferred to another ship. Crane smugly reveals he anticipated Arthur's attack, knowing he could never sit still for long. Still, Crane insists Arthur must complete the third assassination. Once Crane leaves, Arthur refuses to comply. Instead, he overpowers the guards, escapes custody, and dives into the sea to retrieve his hidden gear. He uses an oxygen tank and a compact underwater propulsion device to make a clean getaway. A few days later, Arthur is in Bulgaria, gathering intelligence on his final target, Max Adams, a high-level American arms dealer. Arthur begins tracking Adams' movements and learns that he owns a fortified private compound containing multiple submarines armed with intercontinental ballistic missiles. Over time, Arthur realizes Crane's true goal. He is using Arthur to eliminate rival arms dealers for his own gain. This causes Arthur to doubt the mission entirely. At one point, Arthur snipes one of Adams' guards from a hillside, then sneaks onto a hospital rooftop and hides inside a medevac helicopter. When the chopper is dispatched to Adams' compound to extract the wounded man, Arthur quietly slips out while the guards are distracted. Inside the facility, he installs a signal jammer to disable surveillance systems and methodically begins taking out more security personnel. Soon, the compound goes into full lockdown. Adams is escorted toward a secure panic room. Arthur sabotages the elevator to delay them. When Adams finally reaches the panic room, he finds Arthur already waiting. But instead of executing him, Arthur proposes a new plan: join forces to take down Crane. They decide that Adams must fake his own death. Later, during a staged inspection of his submarines, Adams crosses a bridge that suddenly explodes. Underwater, Arthur is waiting and shares his oxygen tank with Adams so they can both swim to a nearby beach. News coverage reports that Adams was killed in the blast and buried under the rubble. Arthur then calls Crane to confirm the third kill. Crane remains skeptical and demands proof. Arthur claims the body is unrecoverable, lost beneath the sea. Crane sends his men to investigate and eliminate Arthur. In the meantime, Arthur returns to the submarine compound and sets several traps. One by one, Crane's men fall victim to them, while others are eliminated by Arthur's stealth attacks. Crane begins to panic and places Gina outside the boat, using her as live bait. Arthur once again infiltrates from underwater and silently begins dispatching all visible guards. Crane watches the footage through his surveillance system and instructs his men to move Gina back inside, moments before Arthur disables the cameras. Gina tries to fight her guard but ends up wounded in the stomach. She's thrown into a jacuzzi where Crane retrieves her personally. Arthur continues eliminating guards until he finds Gina. She informs him about a timed bomb hidden on the ship. Arthur quickly places her inside an emergency escape pod and launches her to safety. He then chases after Crane, defeating the remaining guards and engaging in a brutal final showdown. During the fight, Crane wraps a heavy anchor chain around Arthur's leg, hoping to trap him. But Arthur manages to use the chain's length to tether Crane to the boat instead. Crane laughs, believing they'll both die in the explosion. Arthur, calm and focused, rushes into the lower deck and locks himself in a reinforced diving bell chamber just before the ship detonates. Gina, now safe, watches the explosion from her pod and believes Arthur has died. The blast draws the attention of the Coast Guard, and she is soon rescued. Meanwhile, Adams, observing from the shore, finds the official story suspicious. He notices a nearby security camera and decides to investigate. Weeks later, Gina is back in Cambodia with the children and writes a thank you letter to May for donating a water filter. One quiet afternoon, while she's teaching, she is stunned to see Arthur alive and walking toward her. At the same time, Adams reviews footage and notices that Crane's vessel was equipped with a diving bell, a pressurized chamber used for deep water survival. After verifying Arthur's escape through surveillance footage, Adams smiles and deletes the file, ensuring Arthur's freedom and future remain protected, and the story ends here. Even someone shaped by violence can find redemption when driven by love and loyalty. Mechanic: Resurrection shows that true strength lies not in how you destroy, but in what you're willing to protect. If you like this video, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and see you in the next video.